Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and members of the commission and staff. Welcome to a special APRC meeting, January 6, 2022. It's 10 o'clock in the morning, and we are meeting remotely, electronically. So we have no additions or deletions to the agenda, and checked previously, we had no public forum input for us today. So basically, we're going to move to our unfinished business item. I just wanted to read a short statement before turning it over to Michael Black. I just wanted to say that social media, self-appointed budget watchdogs, and some council members have really misrepresented APRC's concerns about future city funding. Normally, this early January meeting of this commission would be to develop new goals for the coming biennium or adjusting our current goals for the coming year. But today we are here again to discuss our long-term organizational structure and funding strategies. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Director Michael Black.
All right, well, thank you for that. I want to start off by saying that this meeting has changed, or the purpose of this meeting has changed just a little bit, and it's not exactly the same as what we had anticipated a couple of weeks ago. There have been some developments, and if you read my staff report, you'll understand what I'm talking about. And in that staff report, I make a recommendation, and I'll go over that in just a minute. But also, I wanted to make another statement as well, and I have something prepared that I'd like to read. But just as background for this, I think there has been some comments and implications within the community, and partly within this group that Commissioner Gardner is talking about, that Ashland Parks and Recreation, that almost would imply that Ashland Parks and Recreation doesn't have a great value to the community of Ashland. And I completely disagree with that. And I know the commissioners do as well. But I wanted to just read something really quick that I put together that was going to be part of a letter that was drafted, but turned out to be a little bit more background than we needed. But I do want to read it as part of this meeting and put it into the record. So, and just as background, most of this is just background, but also I think goes into the services that we provide. And I'll just go ahead and go into that. The Ashland Parks and Recreation Commission as an organization, APRC in other terms, was established in 1908 by a vote of the citizens of Ashland. The citizens approved the formation of the organization with the oversight of an elected 5-member board of commissioners, which is also the commissioners, called the commissioners. The formation of the organization, APRC, and establishment of the commissioners was accomplished through the charter for the city of Ashland, and for the purpose of setting apart the operations of APRC from the city of Ashland. APRC was endowed with a levy of property taxes to ensure that it could continue to operate to fulfill its mission to provide, protect, and enhance parks and recreation opportunities for residents and provide a base for tourism, a mission APRC and the commissioners continue to uphold. The historic value and priority placed on parks and recreation in Ashland has helped shape the community and provides many social and economic benefits that we enjoy today, such as providing a multitude of diverse and accessible outdoor and indoor recreation opportunities, maintaining Lithia Park, one of America's great public spaces as designated by the American Planning Association, and a national landmark for outstanding landscape architecture as dedicated by the American Society of Landscape Architects. APRC also provides services and support to seniors through our senior program, as well as educating adults and youth on natural environment, ecology, and stewardship at North Mountain Park Nature Center. Our recreation programs reach thousands of youth and adults every year and provide support, socialization, activity, enjoyment for anyone and everyone who would want to participate. APRC contributes to the base economy of Ashland through tourism at many of our sites, including Lithia Park, the ice rink, nature center, golf course, trails, open space, splash pad, North Mountain Park, sports park, and many other amenities. APRC also provides support for and encouragement to residents and visitors with active lifestyles and a love for the environment, as seen through or exercised through mountain biking, trail running, hiking, jogging, strolling, bird watching, and many, many other outdoor activities that are specific to the individuals and their lifestyles. The high level of maintenance traditionally provided at our facilities improves community livability and property values around our parks. I'm providing this background as support for the framers of Ashland's city charter, and to enumerate just a few of the values that APRC provides to this community. We also provide this background to defend the high level of pride and sense of duty, or I provide this to defend the high level of pride and sense of duty that our staff and elected commissioners place on fulfilling the mission of the city charter and of the organization of APRC, and to point out that hundreds of dedicated people just like us have been delivering these services to the community for more than 113 years, and we hope to continue to do that. So today in this meeting, to transition into the staff report, I prepared a staff report. Let me bring that up here, sorry, for the commissioners. Give me 1 minute. Well, basically, what we're going to be talking about today is how to move forward with our long-term goal of dedicated funding for Ashland Parks and Recreation. There were some recent developments in a request that was sent to the City Council, which I'll go into, in just a minute, that caused me and the commissioners to, the leadership of the commission, Mike Gardner and Rick Launt, to get together and talk about how to move forward. Myself, I have a recommendation for you of how I think we should move forward. And I have talked to Commissioner Gardner and Commissioner Launt about this at length, but I'd like to just kind of go through what happened recently first. So I've got it up here now. Let me just get you guys back. So what happened recently was the Parks Commissioners had decided on December 23rd, I think it was, to forward a request to the City Council to refer a ballot measure for a $2.09 operating levy for Ashland Parks and Recreation. That never made it to, it made it to the council, but it never made it to their agenda, which effectively was a denial of the request. In that denial of the request, it shows that the City Council is not willing to place that referral on the ballot at this time, but it also gives information back to us that they are determined to follow the path that they have laid out in order to work with the public and identifying, well, first of all, exposing the issue that we're experiencing with the budget and identifying possible solutions before any action is taken, and working with the public on identifying what that action should be. So in this meeting, I was hoping that we could actually talk about a new direction, a different direction, which would, as I put it, relax the position of the Parks Commissioners in trying to get on the May ballot. Because regarding an initiative, I know we had talked about it previously, but the reality of an initiative is there are thousands of signatures that need to be gathered. Petitioners need to be organized, and we need to go through the county to first get permission to gather signatures, and time is of the essence. But in thinking about the time and the duties that, or what we need to accomplish during that time, we also need to consider other factors that weigh into that, which include COVID. And with new surges in COVID and things that are going on right now, it's not an ideal time to be gathering signatures. My position is that getting on the May ballot by the council is obviously not going to happen, and through initiative is likely close to impossible at this point. I'm sure it could be done with the same amount of time in different years without the same circumstances that are working against us. But in these circumstances, I don't think that it would be possible to get on the May ballot for a levy vote. Now, add to the circumstances of the uphill climb that we have with gaining signatures and petitioning the county and all of those types of things, but also that the city council may actively oppose the process that we have decided to go forward with. And I think that even makes it a little more daunting if they have the potential to come out and say, we don't agree that this should go forward in May. Even if we were able to get the initiative going and we got it on the ballot, we have to ask the question, would we then still be dealing with the council who had a different path that they wanted to follow and could have a message to the public that maybe this isn't the right time to be looking at a ballot measure before they finish their process, which adds confusion to the process and could be detrimental in a voting situation. So my recommendation to you, again, is that from my staff report is that the commissioners focus on the long-term financial plan for APRC and continue to consider what options are available for the future. I think we should work in conjunction with the city council if that's possible. I think there's more chances of success in that situation. But during the time that we are working with the city council, if you choose to go in that direction, the parks commissioners should continue to become acquainted with and explore all of the options that are available to you, including forming a taxing district, and if that could happen in November, so that we aren't in a situation where we are in August and we're like, oh, now what are we going to do? Things didn't work out. I think we need to keep ahead of we need to be ahead of the situation in our planning and strategy, so that we are in a position where we can accomplish that goal of finding and implementing a dedicated funding source before the next biennium. So let's see. So again, I suggest the commissioners relax their stance for action on the May ballot, and that the commissioners consider working with the city council to accomplish the goal that we have of this long-term funding. Tanya Graham may be at the meeting soon, and she can provide some background information, but she's not here yet. She should pop in just a little bit. But in the meantime, I'm open for questions. But I'd also like to state that working with Commissioner Gardner and Commissioner Lant, I have helped draft a letter, but Commissioner Lant has taken that over. That would be a letter from the commissioners, and should you agree, this letter could go to the city council explaining what your position is, and I would like to just turn it over to Commissioner Lant to explain a little bit more about that, since Tanya is not here yet, unless you have any questions of me before we get into the letter.
Any questions of Director Black before we turn it over to Commissioner Lant?
Not from me at the moment.
Okay. Seeing none, go ahead, Rick.
Well, Director Black, are you going to put the letter
Yes,
on the screen?
I am. Let me just get it up here.
Let's see.
Okay, here it comes.
Thank you. Well, to begin with, I'd just like to say that what we forwarded to this city council was a request for putting a ballot measure on the May ballot. And part of that request said that we reserve the right to move forward with an initiative. As Director Black has already said, there's really huge headwinds, not the least of which is a surge in COVID infections in our community. So it's just not the right time for us to be gathering signatures and interacting on a face-to-face basis, which is really necessary in order to gather the signatures. In addition to that, this would allows us an opportunity to align with the city council in their process. So this letter is simply an attempt to communicate our current stance to the city council, and it might be just as easy for people to read it as it is for me to or if you prefer, I can read it for commissioners if you'd like. What would be your preference?
And there are 2 pages, so I'll scroll to the second page at your direction, Commissioner Long.
I'm assuming people are reading it, so I'm just going to step back for a second.
Sure. Sounds good. Any objections to going to the second page? No, go ahead. Okay.
And there's a spot for all of the commissioners to sign if you do go forward with this version.
Any comments? Any objections?
I think Commissioner Lewis has his hand up. I can take off.
Can we stop screen share?
Go ahead.
On page 1, instead of going for the 209, it mentioned 0.20 per thousand, and to sustain the 189. Is that what I understood on the second paragraph of page 1?
Of the
Yeah.
third paragraph?
Third paragraph, going for the 20 cents instead of going for the whole 209.
No.
What is that? Why is it doesn't say 209 on there?
Well, because what we're currently receiving, as opposed to what we're traditionally receiving, is 189. And so if this request were, if we went with the 209, this would on its face be a 20-cent increase in taxes for the residents, assuming that the city did not increase their taxes. So that's why it's 20 cents over and above what is currently it's a minimum of 120 or 20 cents over what currently residents are paying.
That would require the city council to acknowledge that 189 is a given, and then we're asking for 20 cents on the budget.
Yes, we're asking for 209. And the net result to residents is that they would be paying an additional 20 cents.
Yeah, it already seems confusing for me. I don't know, maybe it's just me. You're either asking for 20 cents or 209 and requiring the council to pony up the 189. If you're asking for 209, you're asking for 209 up and above what, I guess it's how it's written is different than what I was assuming back when we were discussing the strategy and tactics of asking for 209 over and above everything. But that's not the way that's written. That's asking for 20 cents over and above to the citizens.
We never said 209 was what, at least it was never the intent to say, hey, this is going to be 209 additional taxes for the city of residents. That's never what we said. Because that would require that the city, instead of holding the line on their revenue, that they would take that money that was now available to them. And I don't think there's any reason to assume that they will at this point. So maybe it could be written clear, but the reality is what we would be doing is there would be at least a 20 cent increase, but there wouldn't have to be a penny more than that to the residents based on this. It would only be if the city council chose to raise it further, that there'd be more than a 20 cent.
I think Director Black might have had a clarification, and then I have Commissioner Eldridge and then Commissioner Bell.
Well, I think Commissioner Lott explained it, but the intent was Ashland Parks and Recreation Commission would only be asking for 20 cents additional, with the understanding that the city not having the requirement to fund Ashland Parks and Recreation any further would reduce their general fund commensurate with the $1.89 that we were pulling out. Now, as Commissioner Lott explained, they would then have the option to increase if they wanted to, but that should be something that they take to the voters or at least talk about in a city council meeting. It was not part of our proposal that the city council increase their taxes, it was the proposal that they would reduce them $1.89.
Mr. Eldridge?
Yeah, question. I'm just curious if any conversations or things happened since our last meeting that restored your meaning Director Black or Commissioner Gardner or Lant, your faith in City Council having legitimate concern and interest in working cooperatively with us, because I feel like this is a very different path than what we were on when we last spoke. So I'm wondering what changed your mind about, did you receive any sort of reassurance that made you feel like City Council genuinely wanted to work with us and were supportive of the process, as long as will we be involved in this City Council process that they want to move with?
So if I can go on that, yes, I have had conversations with Councillor Graham specifically about this, and we've talked several times since the request was forwarded to the City Council and subsequently denied. And I do believe that this is the best route forward, but the Parks Commissioners reserve the right to continue on a different path at any point in time. I don't think the May ballot is an option right now. So I think there's enough to make me believe that yes, a portion of the city council is definitely willing to work with us, and that there will be a collaborative effort. If I'm to trust Councilor Graham, which I do, and moving forward, and if the commissioners at any point in time feel like it's not working out, I would recommend that you keep that in mind, and also keep in mind the timing between now and November, and be willing and ready to change direction if you feel like things aren't going the way that you think that they should, or the collaboration is not happening. So,
and just to follow up, I don't know if Councilor Graham is going to make it or not, but is her intent to explain to us how that collaboration will happen, and assure us how we will be involved in this decision-making process?
I believe that is her intent, to explain what they know as of now and talk about how the commissioners would be involved going forward. Now, to be fair, I knew Councilor Graham was going to be late to this meeting, but I asked her if she could still come, because I just felt like it was really important for the commissioners to be able to talk to her directly, and conversely for her to be able to talk to you directly. So I do expect her to pop in at some point during this discussion. So.
Commissioner Bill?
A couple of things. I'm not totally comfortable with the way that the letter is set up. I think that the whole budget process is extremely confusing, because all the numbers are subject to further change and negotiation and alteration as the process goes along. I think it might be clearer if we just said that our hope, our preference is to be funded at what we had traditionally been funded at $2.09 per $1,000 of property value, and and we can work out how to get to that point, but that is our hope, and I think what APRC needs to provide the service that it has traditionally provided to Ashland. So I would personally say that maybe we could alter the description of what it is that we're asking for, so as to be more clear about that, because I do think that all the numbers have the potential to vary, but our basic goal is not changing, and it's not, we have a single, simple, straightforward goal. The other thing is that I think that we have, throughout this process, we have done our best to collaborate with City Council all the way along. And City Council, I feel, through the fact, because I think they have a lot of things on their plate, an extremely complicated decision-making process to go through. And I don't know that it's any fault of their own particularly, but City Council has not been able to, I guess, include us in the process of going forward. And I understand that, Councilor Graham may be interested in collecting more information from the citizens, but I also sort of think that there are some features of Ashland that don't necessarily require confirmation from the citizens. Like Ashland, the city of Ashland is partly the parks of Ashland, and it's a substantial part of the value of the city. And I don't know that it needs to be further parsed with the citizens, or with the residents, I should say, of the city. But I guess as far as the letter in particular is concerned, I don't know that I'm totally comfortable or happy with the way that it's phrased. It gives me the impression that we have been off on our own, I guess, discretion, doing our own work, where we haven't really been. What we have been doing is doing our best to continue to sustain APRC without a lot of support from the City Council up until now. Thanks.
Commissioner Lewis?
I would agree with Director Black's idea that we should move past this May issue. And if my 2 cents is, the survey is now the next political document that we need to make sure that we're well represented on this survey, and that we actually get the people out to fill out the survey who feel parks is important. Because if they're weighting the survey towards police and fire, I have nothing against police and fire, but every community has police and fire, only some communities have excellent parks and school systems. So we really want to make sure that the survey and we're represented in it. And getting back to the letter, the 20 cents and the 209 is highly confusing. And I think if we don't require, and I know this is a legal thing, and I'm not a lawyer, but if we don't require the council to put up the $1.89, and we're going to go to the citizens and ask for 209, and there's no guarantee that the council won't just say, hey, well, thank you for go out and hustling for us, and now we got $1.89 to work with. It would be highly disappointing. I would make a really hard, heavy load to lift to convince people of a $2.09 increase on their appraised value. So if it's represented in any way that way, and there is no guarantee that the council will stand up and deliver on the $1.89, then it's just a heavy load, and that's my opinion.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Director Black.
And I couldn't agree more with you, Commissioner Lewis. And throughout this process, I think that has been the goal the entire time, is to only increase what if there was an increase, that it would only be what was needed to get us back to restore the services. And the $2, if it was at the point where we were going forward and proposing a $2.09 levy, and we couldn't guarantee that the city council would reduce $1.89 out of the general fund or whatever what their plan was, and we weren't comfortable with it, then I wouldn't recommend that the commissioners go forward with it, because it is too much to ask the citizens to come up with $2.09. And in my opinion right now, I think that is something that is pretty far out there. Now, I also want to say that Councilor Graham has joined us, and if you want to take a break and talk to her for a minute, or give her a chance to explain what the process is that the council is looking at going forward and how the commissioners could fit into that, you can do that now, or I'm not sure what her time frame is, but she is here now.
Commissioner Lewis had one more question, and then
it's just a follow-up on the survey, and Director Black, do you feel comfortable with working with the council to make sure we're represented on this survey? Because I have no idea what this survey is even about necessarily, other than what people think is the more important in a priority list. It's pretty vague, and so I guess I just see that as our next political move is working towards getting people to fill out the survey in favor of parks.
I do feel comfortable working with the council under Councilor Graham's leadership. I do believe I do feel comfortable with that, but I don't believe that it should be me generally, that there should be commissioners involved in this as well. This is your elected officials. This is policy level stuff. I'm definitely here to support and to give advice when asked, but I do believe that this warrants having commissioners involved with this process. And then as far as surveys go, generally speaking, well, specifically, actually, when surveys come out about the community, when parks is part of it, parks will rise to the top, as we've seen in many surveys, that people value parks and recreation in this community to a great extent. And it goes back to the statement I read in the beginning. For 113 years, people have valued, for longer than that actually, because before the 1908 charter, there was a lot of work underway to make Ashland a parks and recreation tourism stop, as well as health, with the Lithia water and everything. But it's been going on for a very long time. And as I also stated, a lot of the people within this community also identify with the services that we provide, their lifestyles. are supported by the services that we provide. So I think our mission would be to work with the council to ensure that we're exploring all of the different options. But as I stated in the memo, again, we're all after the same thing, and that is to reconcile the situation that we're currently experiencing with the budget, because it doesn't just affect us; it affects all of the departments of the city as well. So, so we would be a part of that, and I feel comfortable working with them and some commissioners to ensure that Parks and Recreation is represented on that.
Well, it would be helpful if Councilor Graham could join us, and I'm not sure that she has a statement or anything that you would like to lead off with, but good morning, Councilor Graham. If you, thank you for attending our meeting this morning. So you probably listened to the last few minutes of discussion and maybe comments or lead-in statement.
Thank you, Commissioner Gardner. I came mostly to answer questions, to help maybe put into that larger context, which I think you all already have a good handle on, where the council is working. I am, of course, only speaking on behalf of myself, but I can certainly update you on the actions that the council has taken and the schedule that we've put in place for this process, and answer questions about the process. So I'm just here to help facilitate your discussion in terms of making sure that you've got answers about the process that the council is moving forward. So maybe what I could do is just give a brief overview of how the process that the council is embarking on. So we had the APRC come talk to us over last fall, and we also had the fire and police departments come and give us an overview of what it looks like in terms of their ability to meet the service requirements that the community has requested and demanded on some level, but certainly has put forward over the last several years. And we looked at the service levels around fire and police, particularly around staffing and call volume, and what are the needs going forward. Is to basically answer the question of, are we trying to keep at the staffing level we have right now? Is that what our goal needs to be, or is there a different goal? And what we're hearing from both of those departments, and it's the same I would say for APRC, is that given what this community is asking of those departments, and given what the community is asking of APRC, we are not resourced well enough in our general fund to deliver those things. And so and we know that there are structural financial realities that are driving that sort of cinching at the general fund level. We know that there are line items that are rising faster than what our tax base can manage, and it's creating this structural shortfall that we've been dealing with for the last several biennia. So the process that we have put in place has a couple of different elements to it. One is that we are getting some help identifying any potential regionalization possibilities for fire and police that might help us meet those service levels without increasing taxes or fees or anything like that. Those contracts have been signed, and we are expecting to have the first analysis, the first sort of overarching analysis information back in April. We have also identified that we will be doing some listening sessions as a council. I'm not exactly sure when those are going to work in the process. We're still working on that part of the calendar. And then the other piece is the survey that you all were talking about. And the council has signed off on the contract to have SOU essentially run the survey for us. Unlike a lot of the web-based surveys, this is going to everyone's home, because the goal is to find out what do the overarching people of Ashland want to see happen. In terms of the questions, I heard Commissioner Lewis's comments about the questions. We haven't fully identified the process by which we will develop those questions, but the overall sense that I have about the types of questions is we need to get a better sense of what do people prioritize, and what might they be willing to do in the event that we don't have the funding to meet those needs. We have asked staff to identify a variety of potential revenue enhancements that we might ask the community about. But that conversation, certainly SOU will be right at the helm of the question development, but the council is going to be deciding how to frame those up. And I would expect, again, just speaking for myself, that those questions would be developed in close collaboration with APRC, with fire and police, and certainly with the city manager right in the middle of all of those conversations. Again, we haven't sorted out exactly how those happen, but council will do the final sign off on the questions that are asked before they go out in the survey. We're expecting to have the survey results back in the summer, and that at that point, then we need to be looking at what is the next step. Have we found enough cost savings potentially in regionalization that we can settle out and solve our general fund problem, or is there some amount that's still not covered? And if there is there a conversation to be had with the voters? All of that comes into the conversation in the summer. So that's the overview. Commissioner Eldridge, did you have a question?
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Maybe this question hasn't been determined yet, but it sounds like the survey, the intent is that it's going to be a physical mailing. Will it also, it seems to me that will it also be available on social media and throughout, be able to be done digitally? Because when I think of most of the folks that are, the circles that I'm in, I'm not sure that mail really works for them anymore.
In order for it to be a scientifically valid survey, we have to ensure that that only one person, or that a single person can't answer it multiple times. And that's why it goes to each household based off of the utility bills. So every household in Ashland will receive it. It's limited. It's going to be one sheet, two-sided in terms of the questions, so that it's something that people will answer. It won't take them, 2 hours to answer. But essentially, in order to maintain and make sure that it is a valid survey in terms of rigor, we need to follow this particular process. One of the things that goes along with it, though, is that we will need to develop some online materials that people can reference back to. And certainly that can be put out on social media. We can let people know you'll be getting this envelope in the mail. Here's a link to some additional information that can help you think about the surveys, but people are going to have to answer them by hand and send them back.
Yeah, that's going to be, I just see anyone under 50 with families that are busy, they're not going to send it back. So you're going to get a disproportionate amount of respondents. And there's absolutely a way to have digital surveys where people have to enter, or they can provide some information to identify themselves in order to do it. I would just strongly recommend that it be available for people to have Facebook campaigns and get folks to take that survey, because I think that you won't get families and busy people with double jobs and tons of mail coming to them. They just won't respond. That's my concern.
Well, and just to follow up on that, what we know is that we need a very robust public engagement process around the survey. And that is, the groups of people that you bring up, there's a number of folks that if we don't put special attention to getting their input, we'll miss it. There's no question. And it's the same way if it was all digital, we would have a different group of people who wouldn't participate. So you bring up really good questions. I saw Michael and then Commissioner Bell.
Well, you kind of touched on what I was going to say about the about getting out and promoting it. In the past, we have assisted people at our senior center with surveys as well, if they when they were digital though. So I guess that's neither here nor there. But I just want to reiterate that I do believe that we would have to have a robust program to promote the survey as well, and to get people to look in their mail for it. And then the other thing I would say is 50 is not that old. I'd say people 60 or younger. So
You're right. 60 is the new 50. It's true.
all right, 70 and younger. So
70 is the new 50.
yeah.
Well, and one other thing that there will be a postcard that comes out ahead of the survey that says "Watch for the survey." You know, if we're generating this on social media and generating excitement and awareness that it's coming, that will help. Commissioner Eldridge, I did ask SOU about some sort of a coding system. Could somebody, go to this website with this code instead of filling it out by hand? And they didn't have the ability to do that. But I certainly think it's worth following up again to see if between now and then we could potentially do something like that. Commissioner Bell?
I was just going to point out that many people don't get a paper bill. I don't know if they get any kind of paper record of their payment of their city utility fees, but so.
Right, but we
one
do
problem.
know we have their addresses though. We have that address list for everyone. So that's the list that we would be using to make sure that we got to every Ashland household.
Okay, and then the other question, I had two other questions. The second one was, when you say robust response, what is it that how many, like what proportion of residents or households are you hoping to get?
This is just pulling from memory, but I think what we had in the proposal from SOU is that they're looking in that 20, 25, 30% is what they think that they can get if the city is doing a robust engagement campaign. SOU is not going to be doing the engagement piece to get people to fill it out, but they've done similar surveys like that in the past, and those are the numbers. They've gotten at least 20% back from them. Sometimes I think up into the 40s.
And if you don't get the 20%, 30% on the first time around, you know how far back that pushes the result of the survey?
There's only one round of it because of our timing and needing to get to these questions. We've decided it's one big push. There's not a second mailing that goes out to people who haven't answered. So we need to get it done on that first major push. Commissioner Lewis?
I think Commissioner Eldridge made a good point about families and people are busy. And if you look at a survey that goes out to individual households, it may be a retired couple or it may be a family of 6, let's say. And so the weighting of it, it seems like obviously the family of 6 is probably going to use our services or feel our services are high in the priority, as opposed to a retired couple who they don't get out much, let's just say, as a generalizing that. So I guess, obviously, I'm a proponent of having as many parks advocates fill out this survey as possible. So, I guess, I guess that's the representation part of it seems limited when it's just each utility bill, that's all.
Right, and I think that in these kinds of situations, you have to kind of pick one way or the other, right? You've got to kind of set a path, but we are going to be asking some demographic information so that we can sort this data based on types of folks, and so that will help us, because that way we can say, well, what does it look like? What are the younger people saying versus what are the elders saying versus different kinds of, however the demographics are going to be split, so that we can the signal from maybe a group of people that doesn't have as many respondents doesn't get lost in the overall picture.
A separate question, is that okay?
Yeah.
I don't keep up on the council budgetary issues as much as I probably should, but I keep up on the parks budgetary issues fairly well. And I see our budget going in the downward direction. Is police and fire headed in a downward direction as well? Or is their funding staying stable or actually increasing? Because, you know, years ago, there was a whole, we need 5 more police officers and I don't know how many firemen. And I'm sure you're well aware that police and fire employees are some of the most expensive people in our community as far as value, monetary value. And so I see our budget getting slashed. Is it all across the board? Is everybody's budget getting slashed? Or is this, are we trying to solve financial problems that the council has when we're 10% of the overall budget?
Well, I think that when you look at the percentage, the percentage that you'd want to be looking at is the percentage of the general fund, because that's really where this problem sits. It doesn't sit in our enterprise funds. Our utilities is not where this shortfall is happening. The city has requirements. There's certain requirements for staffing for police and fire. If you're going to have those systems as a municipality, you have to maintain certain levels of staffing. And I think that's what's driving the fact that you haven't seen cuts in staffing. Now, we didn't materialize those additional police officers. They didn't end up coming on for a variety of reasons. But we have seen materials budgets and those sorts of things, you know, with fire, particularly with fire, and then police have had some cuts in this last budget as well. But that's what we're looking at, I think. And that's the important part of your question here, is that we have a general fund that has 3 different programs in it that are all under-resourced for what we're asking those programs to do. And APRC is one of them, because of the relationship that we have, the financial relationship we have. And that's why this larger process is so important, because we need to find out from the community, are those still your priorities? Are those service levels still what you require? Because our finance director said it very clearly at one of our recent meetings, there isn't space to cut. At this point, we're cutting services. That's how the way that we balance this. If we do not do any revenue enhancements, is that we have to cut some level of services. And so that's the conversation that we're trying to have with the community, is to find out where are those priorities and how do they lay out in terms of not only what do we want, but what types of revenue might be needed in order to continue to deliver that in the reality of the modern world.
Thank you very much. That's excellent response.
Commissioner Gardner?
I just wanted to, for anyone that watched the beginning of our meeting, we're proposing, I guess, laying down our feelings of moving forward to acquiesce to what the council is doing. And what's concerning to me is the general comment that the survey results should be back in the summer. I mean, the summer is June, July, August, maybe even the beginning of September. And if you don't get results back until the end of August, beginning of September, and then have to debate and weigh those out in various council meetings, you know, I basically see that process going well into the fall and really taking away any options at all this year to address long-term funding, stable funding for APRC. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, the timing, I think, is a really important part of this conversation. We don't know if there will be a conversation to be had with the voters in November. It's possible. And if that's the case, then we need to make sure that the process has gone through its steps and is where it needs to be in order for that conversation to take place with the voters. We're putting we're sharpening our pencil on the timing and the scheduling but are looking to hopefully have at least the initial responses back from SOU in July or early August. So not looking to end of August or September. We need to, of course, look and make sure that we know when any filing dates would be for that type of thing, if there is a conversation to be had with the voters. But I do appreciate your concern about the calendar, and that's why we've been pushing to get the answers back from the assessments around regionalization for fire and police, to get those answers back, because they feed into the survey, so the survey can get out quickly. We can get the listening sessions done in that process. We can help the community understand the financial realities and how these different forces are working on their local government as part of that process. But you know, exactly, if we don't have these answers back in September, that's simply too late. If there is to be a conversation with the voters in November, that, you know, the timing is very important, and getting those survey responses back quickly and in a robust fashion is really important part of that. Commissioner Bell?
I just had a couple of questions. My first question is, if your survey doesn't work, do you have a plan B? And my second question is, what do you mean by a conversation with the voters other than for a vote? My third question is, you want to go do the first two first, or?
Yeah, let's do the first two first. So if the survey doesn't work, we will get a certain number of survey respondents. Hopefully that's a very robust number, because what we're looking to find out is, what do the people of Ashland want? So not necessarily just the people who track local city government issues, but the middle of the bell curve out in Ashland, the people who are working and taking care of their families and going about their day. So we will use whatever responses we get. Hopefully it's a large percentage, but even if it's smaller, it will tell us something. We'll have to use what we get. Your second question was the conversation with the voters. When I say conversation with voters, that's what I mean. Is there a ballot initiative? Is there something that is put in front of the voters to approve or disapprove of? If there is something that is going to go to the November ballot, then the process needs to be done by a certain point in the summer in order for that to work.
Well, okay, if you get a 3% response rate from the survey, I would say that is a survey that is not valid, first of all. The third question I guess I had was, on this survey, are you planning on having some question about whether there should be an increase in revenue? Because it would seem that a levy for APRC would be that same question, and it could have been put on the May ballot.
So like I mentioned, we don't we haven't outlined fully the process of developing the questions. So I can't tell you exactly what is going to be on the survey. What I can say is that in the council conversations, there has been interest in both finding out what priorities people have and what they want to see with these different service levels, what they would be willing to accept in terms of lower service levels, but also, you know, what are the different revenue enhancements, if we need revenue enhancements that people would potentially support. So we have asked staff to identify a list of what are possible revenue enhancements, and a levy would be on that list, I would imagine. But I can't tell you exactly whether there's a particular question that will or will not be on there. But like I say, the council has said we're interested in both sides of this equation around revenue and expense cutting.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems to, okay, so there's also the public process of the listening sessions, mm-hmm. Which would give some insight to the council as well. If the survey came back, do you think that, and it wasn't valid and it was only 3%, would the council look at that as direction, or just as a piece of information that maybe didn't materialize, that could have been useful but just didn't materialize? Yeah,
I don't think I can speak for what the council would look at, or how the council would interpret a really low turnout. You know, I think that would just remain to be seen. What would we do with it if the numbers came out really low? And that's, what has been clear in all of this is that we're at a point of real decision making as a community around what kind of Ashland are we going to have. What we know is that we can't maintain what we have had in the past with the funding that we have now. And this bigger conversation is I think, one that people are going to be interested in, especially if we do a good job at the city and with our partners in the community, helping to make sure that people understand how important it is that they participate in this and that they let us know what they're thinking. Because this is not a process that happens very often. This is a major reset in terms of our service provision, and we need people to be involved with it. They need to hear from the people they trust that this is important for them to participate in. And hopefully, and I think we have a good chance of getting a strong response. But if we don't, there's no way for me to predict how the council would read that.
Yeah, and my point was more to the fact that even with a low response, there's still something needs to happen, that one direction or another. But I think it's also incumbent on the people involved, the council of commissioners, administrative staff who are assisting, to do everything that we can to encourage people to fill out the survey to get the best information possible. I think you agree with that. So my question is there any way to incentivize it? Is there any way to incentivize, besides the incentive of just being involved in your local government and helping to make decisions? Is there anything else that could be done to help people to look for that survey, to get it filled out, to get it in? And I don't have any suggestions of what, besides you can come and take a walk in the park with me if you fill it out. So that's just a question, I think, for future to consider.
It's an interesting thought, and we haven't had that conversation yet because we haven't dug in deeply yet into what the engagement process will look like. With our new city manager just coming on, we haven't asked him to dig into that quite yet. But I think it's an interesting question, because what we need to be doing is generating excitement in the community around the conversation that's happening and around the need to participate in it. And there could very well be something that is put in place that and we'll talk with SOU and see if they've seen what they've seen with other surveys. But it really is incumbent on everyone who cares about these issues to reach out to their personal networks and help people understand how important this is.
Right. I agree with that. And I would just add to that. You have resources at the city, but if we're working collaboratively, you have resources with us as well, to help to identify, answers to all these questions.
Absolutely. And like I said, the engagement piece is entirely the city municipal system. Needs to be running, putting this out there and running that engagement process. And that means, everyone. It means all the departments that have some reach into the community. What we want is to hear from absolutely everybody who has an interest in this. And so I would certainly be hoping that that the council would be working very closely with APRC, with the departments in the general fund, even the other departments. Anybody who has a reach into the community, who can help people understand the need to do this and participate in this, because that's what we want. We want that percentage number to be as high as we can possibly get it, so that we have the best understanding of what this community wants. And then the council can craft something that meets that reality of what the community wants.
Commissioner Lewis had a question.
Yeah, I guess Commissioner Gardner made a point of the timeline, and we were proposing a levy in May, and so we're pushing that off until potentially November. And then on the council side, and I don't keep up on the council politics just because I have enough anxiety. But the fact that some councilors or the mayor have signed documents that said they are reticent about raising the property tax revenue. And so if you have a police and fire that have a limit to adjustment, and you have parks that is budgets at risk, and it doesn't really matter about the survey. Obviously, the community, we would all agree that the community likes their fire and police. You know, something catches fire, you want it put out, and if there's something bad happening, you want somebody to take care of that. But the parks is also right up there, but we have no protection. We don't have the state mandating any levels. So there's only one place to cut. So our proposal was to go for a 20-cent increase. And if the timeline is short and we can't get the council to waive us having to go out and get signatures, which, as you know, is daunting at least. And our timeline is to get our proposal levy on the ballot and just go off on our own, which wouldn't necessarily be my call, but it just seems I'm trying to vision this out. And you know, the survey, everybody wants fire and police and everybody loves parks. I can tell you that right now. And whether there's 3% or 30% or 100%, that's what you're going to get. And whether the revenue part of it, if you have people resistant about raising taxes from the get-go, doesn't matter about that, then obviously parks is highly at risk. I mean, I just see we're stuck out there. We turn around, there's nobody, everybody else is behind us, and we're out in the forefront and have to pay the brunt of this adjustment on the revenue. So tell me that's all not true.
Well, three of the people between the council and mayor did sign that pledge of essentially not raising taxes. So that is the reality that this is this conversation is happening within. It's you know, and you know, I think I really don't know how to answer that question other than to say, at the point right now, I think a lot of people in the community don't understand the reality of our general fund, and that we cannot continue the way we have, right? And so we need to do this process so that the community understands that something is going to give, something is going to change, and we need them to tell us which way they want us to move, in which direction that is. And that's like asking the community. It's actually, that's more important than any one of us counselors and what any one of us thinks about whether there's revenue enhancements that make sense or there's cuts that make sense. You know, this is a bigger conversation for the community. And what I'm seeing from the council is that we want to get that guidance from the community so that the steps that we take and the impact, positive or negative, on APRC is actually what the community wants. If they have different priorities now than they did in the past, then we work with that. If there's willingness to look at revenue enhancements to keep those levels of service, then we go that way. But I think, you know, we are out of road for kicking this can down, and that's what we have to get through with the community.
Thank you.
Mr. Eldridge.
Thanks. Sorry for taking up so much of your time, Councilor Graham. I appreciate
okay.
it. I really agree with some of the comments that Commissioner Lewis made, and I just can't help but observe that if someone asked me, "Do you want your house to burn down? Do you want to feel safe on the streets of Ashland and be able, if you call the police, to come? Or do you like to go for a trail run?" Despite the fact that trail running is my favorite thing to do in the world, I would obviously choose the foundational things that keep me alive and safe. And so just to add to Commissioner Lewis's point is that there are different levels of quality. One is like the police and the fire are obviously basic services that are critical in any community. And then there's like, how about OSF and art and culture and literature and beauty and nature and all of these other things that are on a completely different sphere. And so I think that's part of the reason why we've talked so much about removing APRC from this general fund conversation, because it's not the same thing. And it seems unfair to ask people, do you want to drink water and have food and shelter, or would you like to appreciate opera or whatever those aesthetic things are that make life worth living? You obviously first have to be safe and sheltered and first. So that frustrates me. I just had to make a comment about that.
Well, and I think, to your point, I think the question development is going to be really important. I mean, I don't anticipate, just from my standpoint, that we're going to ask a question that says, rank these three as most important, right? That to me is not a very useful question.
That's
the
exactly
question,
what you're going to be asking people.
no, it's not actually. Not necessarily stacked up against each other. Each one of those departments has its own set of service provisions. What is important to you? And, for fire response, maybe it's response times, it's different kinds of things. But I don't anticipate that what we're going to say is, tell us, here's the 4 things that are in the general fund, the 4 major programs, rank them 1 through 4. I don't see that coming. I don't think that that's a useful question. Again, we have to figure out the process for developing the questions. But I think it's more asking about services within the different parts of the general fund. And that's why I think it's important that APRC and the departments in the general fund are bringing information into that question development process.
So you're going to be asking the public about which of the APRC services they prefer and which ones they don't prefer?
We don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but I'm answering Commissioner Eldridge's question of her concern that if Parks is just stacked up against police and fire, that may not give us the information that we want in terms of how people value it, because those are public safety survival kind of questions versus quality of life questions.
So can I jump in really quick, because I hear this question or the statement that that's what you're going to be asking the community. But what I'm proposing is that the commissioners be brought to the table so that it's what we are asking the community, and that the commissioners would be involved in how questions are shaped and have input on that. And that was my vision. And Councillor Graham, is that possible that the commissioners do? I mean, I think that's what I was hearing, is the commissioners do get involved and do have a part as elected officials in helping to shape that survey.
I think it's very possible. Like I say, we haven't figured out what that process is, but it makes sense to me, especially if we're all working together on this, and it seems like that's the path that we're going down. I think it would be important to have APRC as part in that question development process. And I think it makes sense to convey that, if you're interested in that, to the council, because again, we still have to have that next more detailed conversation about how do we go about developing these questions. And it would make perfectly good sense to me, especially if, as I suspect, we're going to be asking about service levels for these different programs. It doesn't make sense for the council to make up these questions without the fire department, the police department, and APRC in that conversation with us.
And Commissioner Gardner's been waiting for a few minutes.
I just had a quick question. Do you anticipate any of the questions relating to if the citizens would approve an increase in property taxes to receive the services they wish to have?
I believe that there will be. And again, all of this has the same caveat that I'm not developing the questions myself. But certainly at the council level, there has been repeated advocacy for making sure that we're asking about revenue enhancements as well. Right. So we want to get the full picture of what Ashlanders want, both in terms of service levels and what they might be willing to do to maintain those. again, I can't guarantee anything will be on any particular question will be there, but there's a strong sense that that needs to be part of this conversation. And I think that there would be significant opposition to a survey that didn't ask those questions about what people might be willing to do to maintain service levels.
Thanks. Mr. Bell.
I just want to say that we would be delighted to be involved in the process. We have done our best to be involved in the process all along.
Well, and I think you know, what would be useful then is to maybe have a communication directly across to Mayor Akins to request that your participation, and maybe, you know, even suggest some ways that you would like to participate in that. It looks like we're going to be developing some sort of a subcommittee at the council level, but I'm expecting that SOU will probably be interviewing different counselors, maybe different departments, and you know, there's some interviewing process that's going to happen before it comes to a subcommittee of the subcommittee of the council. So I think that that's at least what I think is going to be happening with it. But I would get that request into the mayor and let her know that you're wanting to be active in the question development process.
Right. I mean, if SOU is going to be interviewing electeds, this body is part of the general fund, an elected body. You know, we should most definitely be involved with that communication with SOU in the early development stages, I would think. And we will communicate with the mayor. Quite frankly, we haven't gotten responses back on a lot of our communications, but we'll continue to do that.
And we will, I'm not speaking as, I'm not part of the commissioners, but I would suggest that the commissioners also CC the city council on that. So the city council, the rest of the city councilors are aware of the communications that are coming over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, like I said, we that's one of the next steps that we have to take now that the contracts are underway for the regionalization studies, and SOU knows that the contract is going forward with them. Our next job in all of this is to tighten up the timeline for the various different elements of the community engagement process, and then to lay out that process for writing the questions. And so that, you know, that we haven't gone to any level of detail with that yet. And so this is a really great time for the APRC to put forward their desire to be part of the question development process.
Okay. Well, Councilor Graham, we appreciate you taking an hour of your time this morning to speak with us. Several important decisions are being made at these continuous special meetings that we continue to call to try to address the issues moving forward. So your participation is helpful for us to in helping to guide us in the direction we need to go. So I want to say that.
Well, and I just, you know, I appreciate the opportunity to come and answer questions. The situation that we're in as a community is such a difficult one, and I know how hard APRC has been working alongside the rest of the folks at the city to maintain services in this chaotic time with the pandemic and with the fire and all of those sorts of things. And I'm confident that if we're working together and we go out to this community and ask what it wants, that we'll be able to come forward with something that really works, that isn't asking any of our departments or APRC to deliver something that they don't have the resources to deliver. And I think that we're just in we're in a tough time of that, because we all see that something has to shift. And I think we can shift in a really good way if we're working together. And so I appreciate the chance to answer questions. And of course, any of you, please feel free to reach out if you have any follow-up questions to me or any of the other counselors. I'm sure anyone would be, any of the others would be willing to have this conversation as well.
Great. Well, thank you again very much.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tanya.
Mm-hmm.
So can I just jump in really quick? The commissioners always have the opportunity to continue to go down a different path. My recommendation is that this path makes the most sense right now. The trying to do an initiative for May, I don't think, like as I stated, makes a lot of sense. Going along and being part of this process at this point makes sense. At some point in the future, if you feel like it's not making sense anymore, you have the ability to move on with the other plans. So then the other thing, I just need to keep reiterating this, that even if APRC was funded at the current level it is right now, which is $1.89 per thousand, in the next biennium, if we were funded the same as this biennium, we are going to see major cuts in services because we are being subsidized by one-time fees we're subsidizing ourselves through our ending fund balance and spending that down. So it's just to reiterate that today's level of service is not a $1.89 level of service, because we are using one-time fees to bring up that level of service. So $1.89 next biennium is going to look a lot different, and that's even more reason for why we need to be shooting for the 209 and getting back there if possible. If people want to see their services restored, or even to continue the services as they see them today.
Right. So I have Commissioner Lunt, Bell, Lewis, and Eldridge. We'll just go around the horn. Go ahead, Rick.
I think I want to defer because I want to go back to that letter and a second letter that may be necessary. So I want to hear from the other commissioners first.
Okay, Commissioner Bell.
I just was hoping, Director Black, maybe can you give me a sense of how much time you would need to develop a budget? Like, what is the last point at which you need to have some certainty about funding for 2023? I mean, I know you can't be precise.
If we don't have certainty, if we don't come up with a different plan for funding in 2023, we're going to have to go with whatever the city tells us the plan is in 2023. And we will find that out in January or February of 2023. So, you know, the counselors or the commissioners have control of all the funds that come to you. You don't, unfortunately, have control of how much funds the city council decides to give to you. Once they give them to you, you have control. So I'll find out, if nothing changes, I'll find out in January or February what the funding level is. And that'll be that for 23.
Well, I guess what I mean is, how long does it take you to prepare the budget? I mean, I think it would be two totally different budgets if you have $2.09 versus, I don't know, $1. And is it straightforward to prepare? I mean,
yes.
Okay.
I can prepare two budgets. We can prepare a couple of budgets. In fact, if we were going to go the route of levy or a district, we need to prepare a budget to show how the money is going to be spent anyways. So we can, at your request, we could put together a budget that would show you several different scenarios, and that would take us, we'd need some lead time, but in the next few months, we could even put that together.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Lewis.
I guess I'm big on contingency planning. I see the survey coming up. We get all hands on deck as all the groups that depend on our services, we need to communicate with and make sure they fill out this. I don't care their age or how busy they are. This is really important that we bombard this survey with people interested in maintaining services. And I think they're out there. It's just a matter of getting the word out. We have, if you've noticed the emails from the road mountain bike people, the pickleball people, the pool group, they're highly articulate. They're not standard email form. They're well thought out. So the comment section on the survey is going to be really important, that they explain how important it is, not just, yeah, I don't want my house to burn and I want to take my kids to the park. So we really need to get that word out and say, hey, people, express yourself on the survey. But on the second hand, we have to assume that the council is not going to allow us to get on a ballot in November for our 20 cent and on our guarantee of the 189. We have to assume that just because of the lay of the political land, and there'll be a lot of people up for re-election. So we pretty much need to find our last date, that the date we have to start going out and gathering signatures, as much as I don't look forward to that. And assume that the COVID thing is 6 to 8 weeks, and it's going to start dropping off, and so maybe there'll be a little less on number of pens we can hand out and clean and all that whole rigmarole. But that would be the second part of the contingency plan, would be to assume that the council is not going to be there for us, because I just don't see. I mean, Tanya is an excellent counselor who always is willing to express herself and not afraid to make a comment. The other ones, maybe not so much. So we really can't assume that they will put this on the ballot for us. So the levy, so survey, levy, we're ready for November, and we're asking for the 20 cents and the 189 from the city. So however that works out, however that's formulated on the levy, that's clear enough that people will understand what the impact on their property tax will be.
Thank you. Commissioner Eldridge.
I just want to add, I guess we should probably not forget these listening sessions as well. And just as a side comment, how many times does APRC have to prove that they're essential and vital to this community? How many hundreds of emails everywhere I go at SOU and Willowwind, where there's people of all ages, and in town and restaurants where I get bombarded. I just find it completely self-evident, and it just seems like bureaucratic hoops to be jumping through for 8 months, kicking the ball down the road, when we have over and over again showed the critical value of the services of APRC. And furthermore, the interest groups that were mentioned here, these large groups of constituents that are folks, our VMBA, Ashland Devo, soccer, Ashland soccer, pickleball, the swim, these people have been working so hard, and they don't get paid anything to constantly back us up and express and represent the hundreds of people that they, and children and older folks and all the people that they represent. This is my vent session, but I just feel like this whole thing is unnecessary, and that it is self-evident that the community highly values these services. And I personally feel like I will go along and defer to folks that have been in public service longer than me, and I trust your judgment, but I'm also, it feels like kicking the ball down the road to me.
And Commissioner Bell, and then Commissioner Lyon. Thank you.
It seems, so my view of it is that I understand where Councilor Graham is coming from, and I recognize that it would be delightful if we had a survey that expressed clearly what the voters of Ashland wanted. But I don't know that that is going to necessarily get the results that the council is hoping for, because I suspect the turnout for that will be relatively low. But also, I mean, kind of following on from what Commissioner Lewis has said, there's the likelihood that the city council is going to agree to increase revenue seems low, especially considering the people that have already signed on to say that they won't do that. And I think that the tea leaves look strongly like APRC is going to come out the worst for this process. I could be wrong, but I'm not opposed to working with City Council on this, except for the fact that I don't think that the process has any positive result for APRC. And again, as an elected official representing APRC, I feel that it's my responsibility to advocate to the fullest extent for APRC. Like, APRC may come out the worst for for this current political process, but to the extent that I can help it, not on my watch. So I don't know that I would agree with the idea of going along with the city council's plan personally. I kind of think that it would be more appropriate to continue to advocate for either a levy or some other independent funding process on the November ballot, since I think May is no longer possible. And, you know, I think that it also, that would benefit, that would resolve APRC's funding issue, but it would also largely resolve the city council's funding issue, or maybe not resolve it, but at least ameliorate it. And so I think that we would be actually, it would be a benefit for both groups. And so I'm not entirely on board with going along with the city council's plan for the survey, which I think is going to be a long, anyway, I mean, I've already said some of these things, but I think it's going to be a long drawn out process. The results I think are not, it's hard to see a way in which that will be acceptable to APRC.
Thank you. Commissioner Lott?
Well, I guess to start with, I just would have to say that we had a vision. I think the ideal situation was to put see a ballot referred to the or a measure referred to the citizens in May by City Council. That didn't happen. The backup plan potentially was an initiative that seems really unrealistic, particularly based on the surge in COVID cases. So that's off the table, basically, from my perspective. I don't think anything in the letter that we're working on says that we would not be moving towards doing something in November. But I think in the meantime, there is value in trying to collaborate with the city. If it turns out that the survey process is looking like it's coming on too late, we still have the ability to act independently, and that I think is what that's how I look at this. So we're trying to, I think trying to work cooperatively and collaboratively is great, and it makes sense to do that, but it doesn't mean that we can't be at the same time preparing for independent action.
So my question about that is, if we are going to be preparing for independent action, we have to do a lot of preparing before the November ballot. I mean, it's committing yourself, or it's committing us to a lot of effort and time leading up to the November ballot, or leading up, well, in the course of the process of trying to put an initiative together for the November ballot. I mean, you know, I don't feel like hedging our bet in that way is really a pragmatic sort of way of going forward. I think we need to pick one pathway, or at least I think it makes more sense to pick one pathway. I think it's not, maybe it will definitely be frustrating to members of the city council, I think, if we don't pick the path that they would like us to pick. But even so, I don't feel like we can easily do both. But I don't know, maybe I'm wrong.
I'm gonna let Director Black say something, and I'll turn it over to Commissioner Lewis.
So just in response to Commissioner Bell and Commissioner Eldridge, well, everybody, I think you've got a little bit of time here, since, you know, May, I really don't think May is an option. So you've got a little bit of time here where I don't think you lose anything by trying to collaborate with the city council, and you know, taking some time, seeing if that works. And if it doesn't, you haven't given up. You haven't even implied that you would give up your stated goal, or your second option from 2 weeks ago, which is to do the initiative. As I stated earlier, at this point in time, I think there could be benefit working with the city council. If it doesn't turn out, you still have that option. And And I don't think you lose any time by spending a few months seeing how things go at the city council.
Well, so if we get the results back from the survey late August, let's say, that again leaves us with a pretty short window of opportunity for the November ballot.
Well, and that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I think you'll know how things are going over the next few months. You'll be able to gather whether or not the process is something that speaks to what you want to accomplish or it doesn't. And then at that point, you can decide prior to any survey what you would like to do. Surveys are tough. They're super tough to put together and try to get the questions in the way that they're not leading or not 1, 2, 3. So I think it's imperative that the commissioners be involved in those developing those questions and also have a say in what goes forward, not just developing them, but also be able to weigh in on which ones do go forward and don't go forward. And over the next few months, let's say, if you're going down the road and that's not happening, that'll be an indication. If it is, if you are brought to the table and you are part of the process, I think you'll know that as well. And I think just giving it a little bit of time, you'll be able to decide what the best direction is. And you always have that option of saying this isn't working and we're going to go the initiative route. And even if you started that initiative route, you don't start it today, you wait a little bit of time, you still have a lot more time than what we had before the May ballot. So
Commissioner Lewis had his hand up, and then Commissioner Lott. Go ahead, Jim.
I'm just going to get back to, I agree with Commissioner Lott's letter. We want to collaborate on the survey because we are handed a certain amount of political tools. I agree with Commissioner Eldridge and Bell. This is highly frustrating, but this is how government works. I've been 20 years plus doing this, and it's highly frustrating, and it works at geologic time, not even glacial time. And so it really, we have to go with what the tools we have. The tools we have are a survey that we want to be a complete part of as much as we can, but contingent upon that, we want to have a date that we have to start getting signatures, and we know that date. So therefore we have to have an initiative worded. And so that's our next sessions we're going to have, is wording of what potentially will be on the ballot and what we're asking for. And then find that date that we can comfortably go collect signatures and get it on the November ballot. I mean, it seems pretty clear that those are our tools. And collaboration, we should never try to go off on our own necessarily when we need every counselor that will listen to us on board with us. And come January 2022, I have no idea what the lay of the land is going to look like, but we all can assume what the political situation will be. But we need our secure funding, and we haven't. It's our mantra. That's what we've been saying over and over again until we're sick and tired of hearing it. And I agree, this is highly frustrating. And hit the survey hard and make sure we know our dates. And they're two separate issues, and they're independent of each other. And so we have to assume we got to get our own signatures and get it on the ballot in November. And I hate listening to myself say this because it involves an incredible amount of work, and for everybody, all the groups in town. And once again, they have to try to secure our funding. They are our benefactors. They're the people we need caring about us. And so I'll stop my therapy session right now. So I'll be glad to hear what anybody else thinks about that particular plan. I would sign that letter. So, yeah.
Mr. Lott, did you have your hand up?
I did. So let's say that we just say we don't want to be part. I'm going to take extreme position here. We don't want to be part of the survey. We just want to go our own way, and we get something on the ballot. And then it turns out, because we weren't involved with that survey, it doesn't look as good for parks as it could have if we had been involved in the questions that were in the survey. Well, that's all going to be, whatever that's, anything in that survey that is negative about parks will be used by opponents of initiative that if that's what ends up happening. So I think that there really is reason for us to pragmatically to be involved in the process and to keep monitoring it, as Director Black referenced, because there will be a point where if we want to secure our funding, we may have to go a different route. But at this point, the longer we can work with the city council, I think the better. And the ideal would be for the city council to work with us to refer something to the ballot rather than initiative process. So that's where I stand. And if I want to talk a little bit more about that letter, if at some point, whenever we have kind of processed through where we're at now.
Right, Commissioner Aldridge.
I mean, willingness to pay surveys are notoriously inaccurate. People will always say, like, oh yeah, I want this, or I want this, or I'd be willing to pay more for this service. And then anything goes on the budget and goes on the ballot. And when it actually comes down to it, people generally don't vote according to what they say they're willing to do on their survey. So, I mean, I think I'm just being antagonistic at this point, but and I agree that we should be in good faith and attempt to work with city council. But I just, there's a lot of problems with surveys, especially when it comes to questions of willingness to pay. It seems like putting the question to the voters on the ballot would be a much more effective way to find out what they want and what they don't want. So yes, let's continue to do both. And my only question was, how, once we have our verbiage, can we be working with the city council and still be gathering signatures? Because I would like to start gathering signatures as soon as possible. School is still happening, YMCA is still happening, all these things are happening in masks, and I have no problem starting to work on that to make it less onerous, so we don't feel like we're time crunched.
Well,
Director Black, you might want to answer that.
so the first thing that would need to happen is we'd have to have petitioners. But yes, I think it's a strategy, or it's a decision of the commissioners if you want to be working on that at the same time you're working with the city council. It's just a decision. The answer to your question is yes, feasibly it could take place at the same time. But the bigger question, I think, would be, is it the right thing to do? And I think that's the question only the commissioners could answer. And I think I would wait at least a little bit, see what the response is from the letter at least, and then maybe ask that question. The other thing I was going to bring up is that, you're an elected body, a public body as well. It has the ability to call public meetings, and you can have your own public meetings too. If there was an agenda that you felt would be appropriate to put out there to the public and get feedback on it, or a position, or just to get general feedback from the public, you have the ability to do that. And even over Zoom, in fact, I'll say especially over Zoom, we've had a lot of success with people showing up to meetings and voicing their position on things. And that's an option that's available to you as well. The other thing I would say is if you don't, even if you do that, regardless of that side of it, I would be pushing the city council to hold those town hall meetings sooner rather than later, because that is a point of feedback as well that will be important in understanding what positions people have. And there's no reason to wait on that. You don't have to wait to put together a scientifically valid survey or what you hope will be scientifically valid. You can just schedule a meeting and ask the public what they think about these topics. So pushing the council to do that, and also considering doing that yourself are two things that I would suggest working on in the shorter term.
Right. Did Commissioner Bell or Lant have, Commissioner Bell, go ahead.
I guess I'm a little bit unclear about, it seems that we don't have really a consensus about what we want to do going forward. It seems that there are three different things that we could potentially do, or we could do some combination. Either we could just let the city council process play out. It seems like that process, in my assessment, is likely to take long enough if we just let that go by itself, that it will take us well into the November ballot initiative deadline and beyond. And so that if we just let the city council process play out as it is likely to, I suspect that means that we will not have a ballot initiative on the November ballot. The second thing we could do is that we could go ahead and try and collect signatures for our own initiative, or for a voter initiative for a levy on the November ballot. The third thing we could do is ask the city council again to put the levy on the ballot for us, which doesn't seem very likely, but I guess it's another thing we could potentially do that I heard suggested. Do we, I think that, I understand where Director Black earlier was saying that we will already have a pretty good idea of what's likely to happen with this survey within the next couple of months. So, do we want to, is there a deadline that we want to pick to say that the survey doesn't seem likely to produce an accurate or, appropriate or result that I think represents accurately what the citizen or the residents of Ashland want? And then at that point, we will go ahead and pursue a voter initiative for a levy.
I agree that we have to answer some of those questions. Go ahead, Commissioner Lant.
Yeah, I don't think we should, at this point, it's premature to do a deadline. I think what we need to do is we have to gather some information and get the timelines nailed down for our process if we were to advocate for an initiative. So that'd be the first thing. And after we know that, then we could consider a deadline. But at this point, I think it's pretty clear that deadline is some number of months in the future. So we have time to ascertain a more accurate date that is a kind of a more drop dead date.
Okay, although as Commissioner Eldridge pointed out, we could start collecting signatures today for a November ballot.
Well, no, we can't, because the first thing that has to happen is there has to be a language, and there's a lot of steps. And so I think that's the thing we should have staff do, is nail that down, what those steps are, and then present that back to us.
Is it possible to have Director Black do that?
Oh yeah, I can. In fact, I think in order to, in the spirit of keeping the pressure on and never letting the pressure off, I think that might be a good next step, to have a meeting in a couple weeks with the exact process. And then to also maybe consider what the calendar is for the city council and what the reaction is from the letter that could potentially be sent if you decide to. I think, again, a key to this, I think in the near future, it would be, or I think a key to this would be to make sure that those public listening sessions happen sooner rather than later. I think, I don't know what the date is that they have for those right now, but I think with some suggesting and maybe recommending that they take place a little sooner, they might hold those quicker. And that would be a good opportunity to at least get an initial polling of the public. And of course, we would want to encourage people to show up to those, not just let it, make it a passive event, but encourage people to show up to those who have an opinion on how things should move forward. So, but yeah, we can get that information for you. We have a loose sketch of what it looks like right now, but I could actually prepare a report that tells you exactly what it is.
One other thing, I've heard that there's a cost to requesting the county, I think, to put the ballot initiative on the ballot. And I don't actually know what that number is. I don't know if it's possible to get that number as well.
Yeah, it is possible. That's generally when it's a special election and it's being held. It might not apply for a general election. It might just apply if that's a special election where there's nothing else on the ballot and you're holding it just for this matter.
Okay, thank you.
The city has to pay that anyways. Go ahead, Jim.
I guess what would be nice is to work backwards. What's the last date of submitting our signatures? It would be the date that we see that everything has to happen before that. So I think the city recorder already sent us all that information for the May. And so that was all worked out. So we just have to move that for the November ballot, work backwards. And then I think the listening sessions, I think as Commissioner Eldridge mentioned, should be us doing the listening sessions. If we have to start depending on the council's decision-making process of when they should ask people what they want, we're not even at the table. So we should have the listening sessions of how valuable we are and not depend on council. And that's something that is just the elected officials showing up on a Zoom and asking people to tell us what they feel. So I think that would be proactive that way. And I wouldn't mind showing up for those either. And then more strategy. We have to get the wording down, and I think there's no rush since there was talk about, you know, the COVID and May, and it doesn't work. We're not getting any signatures for months and months actually. And so, and I would agree with Commissioner Bell that the timing's not going to work out for the survey, but we will at least get people interested in parks, fill out the survey. We already have somebody who's willing to sign our potential initiative there, just because we've kind of got them on board and they've been educated on where we stand. And I don't want to threaten people, but if people understood the situation that we know we're going to be in when the funding really starts dropping off, we just have to package that in a way that's non-threatening, just going, hey, our hands are tied. They're not going to give us enough money to fund certain things, and here are the things we're looking at. And maybe the listening sessions are, what do you want to cut from our budget? Because that's where we're realistically looking at having to make some severe cuts, just like the council is doing basically the same thing. Our potential is, if we don't get funding, then we are going to have to start reducing services. I mean, you know, there's no magic to that. So listening sessions on our end, strategy and tactics later, you know, in a couple of weeks, whenever that is, we'll have all the information of our due dates and when we would need to rally the forces and go out and stand in front of shopping cart and get signatures, you know, and so it's daunting, I know, but you know, like I agree with Commissioner Bell. We were elected for this. We volunteered for this position, and it's not always just fun and games. Guess what? So,
unfortunately, it's inhibiting our ability to do the things that all of our constituents want us to be doing. And that's also a frustration for me. The East Main Park project, all of these things were just that we could be working on.
yeah.
So, so we have some decisions to make regarding moving forward. And I've made a small list of them, but did you want to comment, Commissioner Lott?
Well, no, I just want to, once again, try to get back to that letter. I think that, I think it's important to write this and move on, but I guess the process, as I understand it, is that we need to, at our next meeting, actually approve it. And you know, we're not approving it today. But I did come up with, in trying to listen to particularly the feedback from Commissioner Lewis, I actually did do a little rewrite that I maybe Director Black can throw up on the screen. I just rewrote one paragraph and it just trying to make it a little clearer as to what we're trying to accomplish.
Okay. Yes, I believe technology will allow me to do that. And so you just want the paragraph from the email.
Yeah, just the paragraph.
Okay, give me 1 second. I want to just take it out of the email.
So this will be one decision that we'll try to hammer out today, and then, and like Rick said, probably vote on at the Wednesday meeting next week, the 12th. And then a couple other processes that we should probably discuss to determine how we want to proceed.
Okay, I believe
Okay.
that is your paragraph.
Yeah, I'm going to read it because I actually have I added one thing to that. In fact, you could, if you listen to me, Director Black, you could probably add it in there as we're talking. So, keeping with the solution-oriented approach, the commissioners forward a request to the council to refer a $2.09 per thousand special operating levy for APRC to the to the ballot for May 2022. The rationale of this request was to separate the funding requirement for APRC from the city of Ashland as enshrined in the city charter. And these are the words I added, Director Black. If passed at an election, this would have resulted in a 20 cents per thousand increase in residents' taxes to restore APR services to their traditional level from the current $1.89 per thousand allocation. And then in parentheses, any further net increase in property taxes would only occur if city council approved them. And then the rest is basically unchanged. Commissioner Lewis, does that help?
It does, except for the May 2022. We don't want to just move that to.
No, because what this is just talking about what we did. The commissioners forwarded a
Oh, I
request
see.
to council.
Gotcha.
So that's just saying what we did, and it's putting that amount there to at your feedback to trying to make it clear what we did.
And if you could, I'm sure you will, just send me this so we're ready to vote on it. And yeah, as long as it, yeah, I understand now. Yeah, it would be better if I could just sit there and look it over and look it over again. It'll
be in the packet.
Okay.
And I think if anyone, and so the decision is not being made here. So if people have other feedback, that's still, we'll make changes. We'll continue to refine and improve it. But
Well,
I think
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I just want to point out that we have not, this letter does not preclude any options for us. It just says that we're going to try to work together with council as best and as far as we can.
Okay, so that's number one, what we have moving forward for next Wednesday. Commissioner Bell? Well, do you want to follow up with that, Rick?
Well, just I think that I just would say the other thing that we should probably get into the packet, which may not make it, I guess today's when it goes out, but maybe it'll have to be a supplement, is we should also get a letter in requesting to be, a second letter requesting to be involved in the survey.
Right, I want to discuss that as well moving forward here today. So Commissioner Bell?
It seems just for the sake of simplicity that we should say that we will do, that our letter should basically read as follows. We commit to doing our best to work with City Council on this process. And that, I think if that's the gist of the letter, then that's what I would say in the letter. I mean, I wouldn't put anything else in the letter.
That's one
It
approach.
seems like that's what Rick parsed out, is that being fairly diplomatic, which is always kind of a good thing, but then leaving our options open. I think it does both of those. It's diplomatic in the sense that we really want to work with you because we're all the city and it's all our friends and family and people we know, but it's also, we have a duty to do, and he's expressed that, and the history of it's important. I don't know if anybody read the Mail Tribune about our funding, and whoever wrote that. I thought it was a great little history letter. I don't know if it's a letter to the editor.
Editorial.
It was editorial, yeah.
Editorial, and I don't even know who wrote that.
It didn't have a
Gary
signature.
Nelson,
Huh?
the editorial staff. of the
Oh.
Tribune.
Okay, well, I thought it was at least open and honest and spread out the issue, and didn't really pick sides, as opposed to Mr. Silver. Anyway, I think being diplomatic is always helpful, but you want to work with people, but then you want to keep your options open. I feel that letter does that, and
Yeah.
I would agree. We need a letter saying we want to be on board with this survey. We want to be part of it, and leave our options open there as well. We just want to be transparent about where we're going. There doesn't seem to be any free money available, so I don't know. I get back to talking with Tonya about the issues are already sealed. I mean, we're the ones that gets cut. I don't see that anybody else is going to get cut. So we really have to understand that we are on the chopping block, they aren't. And so reality is reality, and pragmatism is pragmatism. So that's where I would vote.
For what it's worth, I really do believe that the majority of the council is really trying to find a way to keep all of the ships afloat. I really do. And the processes and everything are another issue. Whether they're the best processes and all that, it's not really for me to say, but I do believe that there is an intent to try to float all the boats. But I think, Commissioner Lewis, you're absolutely right, and I think everybody knows what the writing on the wall is. I put it in writing myself that the public health, safety, and welfare, although I believe we are part of that, is generally described or interpreted as police, fire, and even planning with building services before it goes to Parks and Recreation. And when funding is short, cities will resort back to that public health, safety, and welfare, and which again has traditionally been described as police, fire, and building and planning services for the sake of safe communities. So anyways, so I hope the process works out to where we can work collaboratively to resolve the situation. But again, as Commissioner Long pointed out, I don't think the letter implies at all that you're giving up any other options. It's just saying we want to work collaboratively with you. If you feel like that's not possible going forward, you can change your mind at any point. You can set a date, you can work backwards, we can help you with those dates, and we can keep track of it. But the key is going to be keeping pressure on this and not becoming passive with this process. And if at any point that you feel like you are being forced into a passive role, then that's, I think, the time when you need to really start considering what your whether to move on to option B.
So Commissioner Bell, can I ask a quick question? Are you willing to sign off on this letter that we talked about and discussed if we bring it up next Wednesday, or are you not inclined to sign off on that?
I think I would just simplify it. I mean, I know that you think that that this is sort of frivolous, but I really would literally write a letter that is only 2 lines that says, we are happy to continue to work collaboratively to the extent possible with city council, period. And nothing else.
Right.
I would certainly sign that letter. I mean, I'm not completely opposed to signing Commissioner Lott's letter, but you know, I feel like we have done our best to be collaborative. The collaboration or the failure of collaboration wasn't our failure. So, I mean, I don't know. It's a question maybe of the tone of the letter, and that's kind of a subjective thing. So, I mean, if the consensus is that it's the right letter, then I'm willing to sign it as well.
Well,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I assume that the purpose of this lengthy letter is to kind of just continue to leave a paper trail and document the efforts that we've made. And yeah, I'm kind of with Commissioner Lewis, where I'm going to need to sit down and sort of look at it. It's hard for me to really get the tone reading it on the computer in the middle of a meeting. So, but I may very well agree with you, Commissioner Bell. I just, I don't have a problem with more words as long as it's documenting authentically what we've been trying to do for the last year now.
And personally, I'm in that same camp, to be honest. But I think we need to see the letter in front of us and then make our decision or make any suggestions to crafting it. But it's more an historical document with the tone of we're willing to collaborate moving forward for a period of time. So, Commissioner Lott?
Yeah, and just for clarity, this letter was drafted by Director Black, and then I took it and made a fair number of changes, but it really is a collaborative effort between Director Black and myself. So calling it, I mean, ultimately it will need, if it's going to have any value, it will be a letter from commissioners.
Yeah,
But,
that was my point, bringing it up with Julian, is, you know, it needs to be from everyone, you know, regardless of who crafted it.
Yeah, and I may have crafted it, but it's not from me.
Yeah,
So either you agree with it or you don't. But I'll just tell you, it was a lot longer before I sent it to Commissioner Lott. So
yeah. I mean, if our signatures are on it, it is not Director Black's letter in any way, shape, or form. It's ours.
that wasn't my point. My point is simply that calling it mine is really not accurate. It was a collaborative effort, and then from that point, the question is, does it work for everybody? And that's where we need to get to, is that it works for everybody. Otherwise, we're not going to send this letter, in my opinion, if say it's three people want to sign it. We need to have something that everyone would sign.
Well, I appreciate that. Could I?
Go ahead.
I know you can't see my hand when it's over there. I was just hoping we could maybe give Director Black a list of a request list of a sort that we could maybe agree on, perhaps as well. And the requests that I would at least make would be that we could perhaps schedule maybe 3 listening sessions for the public, that we could schedule, notice, you know, promote to as many people as we have a way of promoting it to. And with the expectation that all of us would hopefully be able to attend those and, you know, get as much feedback as we can possibly get from the community. And it seems like 3 might be a reasonable number, or maybe more, I don't know, or maybe less, I don't know. But also that we, as a second request, that we get a timeline that that does include the deadline for providing the language, or to, I guess, getting the language for a ballot initiative together, and also the deadline for having the signatures, as well as the number, of course, for the November ballot. And I guess any other relevant details are likely to be relevant details for that timeline. But maybe if that's possible, you could, Director Black, perhaps you could provide that for us at your soonest convenience.
I can. Now, when do you want to talk about when to schedule those meetings? Because we have a meeting next week and then we don't have another meeting for 3 weeks after that.
Well, it seems to me that, they can just be evenly spaced between now and November. Well, between now and September.
Well, I think there's more planning than just the dates. There's, how you want to approach it. What are the questions you're going to ask? How are you going to promote it? Things like that. And who's going to be involved with it as well. Just running one of these is getting ready for one of these is a lot of work, and we can do it. I'm not saying we can't do it. It's just, I think we need a meeting. Like, do you want to talk about it next week? Do you want to talk about it next month? I would say that the first meeting in February, we could have it on the agenda to lay out a plan for how to proceed, and it could include the dates and kind of a statement of or goal that you want to get out of these, how you want to approach the public. Is there a question that opens it up, or do you just allow people to come in and talk, or how, so there's some things we need to iron out. So my question was more about, is it okay if we get that back to you in, like, say, the work session in February?
That sounds fine to me. If the rest of the commissioners think that that's okay.
I would agree.
All that information will be critical, and probably the sooner that we get those times and amounts and, possible dates will be helpful. I think beginning of February sounds reasonable.
Okay.
Mr. Lamont, you had your hand up earlier.
Well, I just wanted to point out that I don't want to be talking about listening sessions in September, since we've already said that we wouldn't want survey results coming back in September because it's too late. This needs to happen this spring.
I think we could pull it off this spring. I just think we need the direction of how to pull it off, and then the when, I believe, would be probably the easiest part is when. Well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, we have to factor in spring break and things like that, but obviously we'll be able to pick a time in the spring that we could, or early summer at the very latest, that we could do this.
And I really think that commissioners should think about this proposal of listening sessions. I mean, we already heard that the council is going to be doing similar thing. So, we just have to think strategically of what we hope to accomplish with a listening session that would be separate from what the council is proposing. And just be prepared to give direction to staff on how we feel about that.
And I would even go so far as to say that in working collaboratively with the council, that this be part of it, and that they are invited to participate if they want to collaborate back.
Or even that that this takes part of the load off of them for their listening sessions.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay. So I guess that's direction for staff, Michael Black. I'm sure the record will capture the request from Commissioner Bell and other commissioners.
Yeah, we definitely have it captured. So
okay. The other thing we need to discuss briefly then is a letter to the mayor and city council about being part of the collaboration on the survey questions. That was a direct request from Councilor Graham for us to craft that. I'm assuming we could craft something if the commission once again needs to review it. It could be reviewed next Wednesday, or possibly just crafted and sent around for review, and then if it meets, if it meets the necessary requirements, fire it off to the city council and mayor. Commissioner Watt?
Yeah, I think staff should draft something and propose it, and it just comes to our meeting next week.
that work for you, Michael?
Sure. As long as you don't blame me for being long-winded. So, we could just add a second sentence to Commissioner Bell's letter and call it good. So,
All right. Commissioner Bell.
Again, in this, I think it could be as simple as the Ashland Parks and Recreation Commission, the Board of Commissioners requests to be fully involved in the process of vetting any questions for the upcoming survey.
I agree. I mean, that it could be as simple as that.
Thanks.
Commissioner Watt.
Yeah, we've been at this for over 2 hours. I'm just wondering if we're getting close to a finish line.
I think we're almost there. I don't have anything else on the list of things that we really needed to do. I think we set up the lineup for our regular meeting next week. And, as far as agenda goes, we have other items from commissioners or staff, if anyone wants to bring any other items to the table, since this is a regular special meeting.
Not for me.
Commissioner Black, Director Black, sorry.
don't call me that.
Freudian slip.
Yeah. So I wanted to bring up the recent storm that happened, and I want to take the opportunity to talk about that, but also commend staff for the work that they're doing. If you've walked through any parks, you've seen that there is any loose material that was in the trees or branches, anything from the smallest little thing to the big branches fell with the recent storms that we had. And our staff has been working nonstop to clear trails and to open up roadways, because we did have some trees fall across roadways from parks out into the road and things like that. And they have done an excellent job and an immense job cleaning up after that. And I also want to commend them because, this is one of those housekeeping things that, we take care of some of these things quickly. And I think within the next few days, certainly within the next week, it'll be hard to tell that there was even any damage that was done if you're looking at the ground, because our parks will be back to the shape that we are accustomed to. And that is because our staff, without having to give special direction or anything, is dedicated enough and it understands their responsibilities to this community and cares enough to get out there and get on it and get everything back to the condition to where all of our facilities are open and that are currently open are able to function and operate the way that people expect them to. So I just want to give kudos to staff for that. I really appreciate all of their work. And I know it's been a lot of work. And I've received several pictures showing trees, very large trees, down to even the smallest material that's just been getting cleaned up. And it's they're just moving on in stride. And I think we're very fortunate to have the group that we have on our team.
Yeah, I think everyone on the commission seconds that feeling. We're appreciative of the work they do, and it's amazing how quickly our staff can get things back in order after a series of events. So,
yeah.
Anything else from commissioners? Leslie, we're ready to wrap up the meeting actually, and we're just kind of at if there's any items from commissioners or staff, anything else you wanted to add?
No.
Okay. Well then, we'll adjourn the meeting for today. I think it was productive. I think we've got everything we need moving forward, and then we'll wrap up some loose ends next Wednesday at our regular meeting, 6 o'clock on January 12th. So we'll sign off and adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for participation.